Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested, and today we're going to be talking about the Meta Quest Pro, the new mixed reality headset out from Meta, just announced today at the Connect conference, formerly known as Project Cambria, and let's just say not one of the best kept secrets in the VR, AR, MR headset space. But I'm happy to say that I was able to go hands-on with the Meta Quest Pro over at Meta's headquarters last week, spent about 2 hours with this new headset, tried a variety of experiences, and so today we'll be talking about the hardware, my impressions of everything from the ergonomics to the applications, and some of the lingering questions I have as we hopefully will get a chance to test and review the headset when it ships later this month on October 25th. It's available for pre-order now, and let's get the pricing out of the way. It is a $1,500 headset. Yes, it sounds expensive because it is expensive. So let's talk about all that, starting off with the hardware and design. Now, the Quest Pro is not going to replace the Quest 2, which launched 2 years ago at that incredibly attractive price of $300. They've since bumped up the not only storage capacity from 64 and 128 gigs to 128 and 256 gigs, but also the price of the Quest 2 headset. So now they start at $400 or $500 for a 256 gig version. But the Meta Quest Pro will kind of be the higher end, the more productivity driven, creativity driven, and less so much games and entertainment focused headset, even though it shares fundamentally the same software platform as the Quest 2 with full backwards compatibility with existing Quest 2 applications and apps going forward, as well as whole new suite of applications that take advantage of features like full pass-through color, VR, its new controllers, and some improved processing speed and additional memory. So first off, let's talk about the hardware and design of the Quest Pro, which will be sold alongside the Quest 2. It's not replacing that. And while it has a lot of similar design attributes as what we think of as these standalone inside-out tracked VR headsets, it's also a fundamentally different type of headset and has new technologies that change its form factor and allow Meta to redistribute the hardware. So with the Quest 2, all the hardware is in the front here, as was with the Quest 1, from the processing, the storage, the RAM, the system on a chip, to the lenses, the displays, and the batteries. So a lot of that packed in the front, which meant that if you use the standard cloth head strap, you can really feel the weight of that in the front, and it's a little bit of a strain on your eyes over a long period of use. Now you can get aftermarket accessories, aftermarket head straps like the Elite head strap that Meta sells for the Quest 2 that allow much more comfortable use and a much more balanced weight, especially with the added battery version of the Elite head strap. And that's the design that's now kind of standard with Quest Pro. It's a fundamentally solid unit with these rigid head straps. In fact, you lose the angle adjustment in the front of the Quest 2 because it's a solid piece from the front piece all the way to the back, and the battery is now moved to the back, a curved battery in the back of the headset. It actually weighs more than the Quest 2 at 722 grams. That's actually more than even the Quest 2 with the Elite head strap, but as we'll talk about when we get to the ergonomics, because of the balanced form factor with the counterweight and because of the smaller front profile, it doesn't feel that much heavier. And a lot of that is due to the new optic system. So it's using these very thin pancake optics, similar to the ones I saw in the prototype headsets when I visited Reality Labs Research. And what they say is that allows the whole front stack to be 40% thinner than the Quest 2. And that actually has a meaningful effect in terms of how comfortable the headset is and how long I feel like you can use it. Those lenses sit in front of two LCD panels. So unlike the Quest 2, it's not one panel that they have lenses in front of. It's now back to two panels with mechanical IPD adjustment. And these panels are LCD, LED backlit panels with 500 points of local dimming with a resolution of 1800 by 1920 pixels per eye. So while slightly higher than that in the Quest 2, it's still comparable. And with the new lenses, Meta says that allows for about a 10% increase in the pixels per degree, the pixel density, when you have a standard field of view. The field of view, they say, is 106 degrees horizontal and 96 degrees vertical. So while it doesn't look like an extremely wide field of view like I've used in, for example, the Vario Aero, it is generous and very comparable to Meta's line of VR headsets. What was more meaningful, though, was maybe the clarity in the optics, and the new pancake lenses did allow me to see a wider sweet spot across that field of view. So as I move my eyes around, I could actually see more detail and less visual distortion and aberration in the details, both on the inside and outside periphery of my vision. Meta hasn't said exactly the dimensions and physical size of their LCD panels, and it's been rumored online that these panels are actually tilted about 20 degrees to better match the optics. But from my time using it, I couldn't see the seams of the panels. Sometimes in headsets, you can see like a vertical line as the lenses don't cover the entire LCD panel or OLED panels. The displays also run at 72 hertz, although 90 hertz will be an option. And unlike the Quest 2, there's no word of a 120 hertz option for these panels. Now, the displays are still LCD, so they may be inferior to OLEDs in terms of the contrast, but there is a new LED array of backlights, 500 individual points of local dimming, which allow for better contrast, and also a quantum dot layer that allows for better color vibrancy. And the contrast was actually noticeably better in the applications I use than what I recall from using the Quest 2 in a day-to-day. So maybe not night and day changes and not as pitch black in terms of what the dark levels are as an OLED, but it was a noticeable improvement. Color-wise, I didn't really notice an increase in vibrancy in the applications I use, and Meta says the color gamut compared to the Quest 2 is increased by 30%, but again, really hard to tell in the brief time I had with the Quest Pro. Something that I did notice, though, is that there's a pretty significant light leak with the Quest Pro by design out of the box because of the way the lenses and the optical stack sits. There's no full gasket that pushes against your face on the sides or your cheeks in the standard package. So when using the headset with its pass-through cameras, I could actually see my body, see a little bit of my periphery in the world outside. But the headset does come with magnetically attached light blockers that you can attach to the side that do act as blinders for your periphery. And there'll be an aftermarket accessory for $50, a full facial interface that would block out most of the light. But I didn't get a chance to try either of those in the headset. Something that was very noticeable is just how much the ergonomics improved with this new design and how comfortable the headset was to wear for about a 2-hour period. Not only did the weight feel balanced and the reduction in the weight in the front, plus how much less it protruded out from my face, made it more comfortable to wear, put less strain on my face, honestly. But also because of the way it's designed, it very easily fit and accommodated my glasses. I've used headsets in the past where, yes, my glasses technically fit inside the facial interface, but sometimes they push the glasses against my nose and against my face, or it seals it to a point where my glasses, the lenses fog up. I'm sure some of you have experienced that before. Here, the glasses didn't fog up. I was able to even go and adjust them from time to time. And in some cases, when I was done with the demo, I forgot I had my glasses on. I actually went to go pick up my glasses because I typically wear headsets without them and with prescription inserts. And I forgot the whole time I had my glasses on because that's how comfortable they were to actually wear inside the Quest Pro. And speaking of prescription inserts, looking at the lens design, it doesn't look like to me that you'll be able to use your existing prescription inserts that you may have had with the Quest 1, Quest 2, and you may need new style ones for the new optics if you want to use them, or just wear glasses as I did with my demos. There is manual IPD adjustment in the headset as well because the lenses and displays are their own separate units, and you do manually, physically adjust them while you have the headset on. There's no dial to adjust, and thankfully it's not like the 3 presets you have in the Quest 2 anymore. And the range of IPDs supported ranges from 55 millimeters to 75 millimeters, though in headset the software will read 71 millimeters as the max, and 59 millimeters is what I saw as the minimum. So it remains to be seen whether it actually can support that extra wide range of 55 to 75 millimeters if you're someone who needs that. But outside the design, ergonomics, and the internal hardware, the exterior hardware is where there's a fundamental difference between the Quest 2, the Quest 1, and the Meta Quest Pro, because there are a bunch of cameras on this device. Now, for the SLAM tracking, the inside-out tracking, there are now 5 cameras on the outside, and it's not like the Quest 2, where you have 2 cameras on the bottom and 2 cameras at the top. There's 2 cameras on the outside, and then 3 cameras kind of along the nose bridge here for that inside out tracking. And that's because these cameras are really fundamentally for tracking, for SLAM tracking. They don't no longer have to track the controllers because the controllers have their own tracking, as we'll talk about. The other reason is that there's now full color pass-through video. So while the Quest 2 had pass-through video in grayscale and a relatively low, very pixelated resolution, here one of the big selling points of the Meta Quest Pro is mixed reality, pass-through mixed reality. So unlike Magic Leap and HoloLens, which use an optical pass-through for AR with waveguide optics, here it's a video pass-through. Although Meta will be very quick to say it's not video, but it's actually passing through. They're taking that video data and then they're actually reprojecting it and reconstructing it and overlaying it on top of the SLAM's understanding of the physical space. So if you've used a Quest 2 before and in your calibration of your Guardian, for example, you can see that there's like it doesn't look like, it looks like maybe a little warping of the video as the video kind of is overlaid on top of meshes and geometry. It's similar to that, right, in the Quest Pro, except less distortion and it's a more comfortable video image. Now, I don't want to oversell it because in the environment that I use that headset in, the pass-through video was kind of dim in like low light environment. So the video didn't look extremely crisp, had a little bit of video compression and noise as you maybe would see in like a low light camera. And it was a far cry from like for example, the highest resolution VR 180 video that's out there in the world right now. So while it was very easy and comfortable to recognize people's faces and interact with objects in the real world with just pass-through video, it wasn't sharp enough that I felt like I could, read a paperback book or see objects in the far distance. I also felt like the video didn't support a very high dynamic range. So in the relatively low light environment that I was doing the demos in, when I picked up my phone to try to read text on my phone, the phone was very blown out, very washed out. So in an environment where you might have a big window and you're trying to resolve details both inside and maybe look out into the world, I think it might be difficult to see both of those things clearly at the same time. The pass-through video resolution is higher. They wouldn't specify exactly what that resolution was, except to say that it's twice the number of pixels. And again, that's to say that while it was much clearer and sharper and of course in full color compared to the Quest 2, I still think we're a few generations from being as crisp and clear and comparable to an optical pass-through system. Here it was very clearly a still video pass-through system. But not only are there 5 cameras on the outside, there are also 5 cameras on the inside of the headset, because the Quest Pro does eye tracking and face tracking. It uses 3 cameras on the top for eye tracking, and the eye tracking cameras actually interestingly have a refresh rate of 72 hertz, and 2 cameras that look down. You can see the bottom of the headset, those shiny parts that look down, IR cameras that look at your face, and those cameras, interestingly, run at a different refresh rate at 30 hertz. And while eye tracking and face tracking technologies aren't new to VR headsets, you can already buy eye trackers and even a face tracker for HTC's Vive Pro system. How tightly this technology gets integrated into the applications and the OS and the avatar systems will be, and hopefully for Meta's case, what separates the Quest 2 from those headsets, because it'll be a standardized system for everyone with a Quest Pro. So with eye tracking, they talked about the benefits of potentially foveated rendering, the ability to harness and focus the rendering and processing power to increase fidelity where you're looking, but none of the applications and demos I tried demonstrated that. But the new avatar systems that are used in, for example, Horizon Worlds and your Horizon workplaces, those now have integrated the face tracking and eye tracking systems for more expressive avatars. And one of the ways they demonstrated that was with a demo where you looked into a mirror and there was a rendered alien face looking back at you, which was your face, but also represented where you were looking, your eye movements, your face movements. You could puff up your mouth, you could make frowns, you could smiles. All these micro gestures would be communicated in that avatar, in addition to the head tracking and the hand tracking that you normally already have. So combined, they don't no longer have to fake eye blinks and do cheats that existing avatar systems have to do to lock eyes and avatars when you're talking to someone. These can now truly be expressive avatars, which could potentially be great not only for social interactivity and productivity, but also for performance capture and performance in general with things like VTubers. That's the idea. And privacy, obviously, a big concern for Meta, at least that's what they say. And so for the Quest Pro, these tracking technologies, eye tracking and face tracking, will be turned off by default. It'll be opt-in only. And so they'll have to convince users that it's worth opting in. Not only will there potentially not be a trade-off in battery life when you flip these things on, but there's actually going to have to be utility in the avatar systems, in foveated rendering, to make it worthwhile to actually flip these on. And they were very insistent that the image data that is captured by the eye tracking and the face tracking never goes out to developers. It stays in headset. And what the hardware and software does is it takes that data captured 72 times a second in the eyes, 30 times a second in the face, and then pulls out data points from that imagery. 70 data points in total for that tracking, which those data points correspond to the rigging of your face, essentially. That's what developers can get access to. And apparently these data points are kind of commonly understood ones in the performance capture in the face tracking world. And so developers who are already working in face tracking, who are already working in character rigging, might be able to take those and adapt them to existing rigs to streamline those workflows. That's the idea. That's the potential with face tracking as a professional tool. Like with every eye tracking technology, though, there's going to be a calibration process with every new user, which I went through. You look at the dot as it moves across the eye. And in one of the demos I use, the eye tracking while it worked, it did have like a flutter of an animation with one of my eyes. So a recalibration may have been necessary. One of the things the system also does is it has a fit finder. So if the headset kind of drifts away from an optimal spot where it can't see your eyes or can't get all your facial expressions, the application lets you know to do some adjustments so it's perfectly aligned when you start an application. All right, let's talk about the controllers on the Quest Pro, which are very different, fundamentally different than the ones we've seen on the Rift S, Quest 1, and Quest 2. No longer are they being tracked by the cameras on the headset itself. They have cameras on the controllers that do their own SLAM tracking with a Qualcomm processor in each controller to do that processing and relay that wirelessly back to the headset. 3 cameras on each. So you lose the entire necessary tracking ring, the IR tracking ring, but there's extra processing now, no longer replaceable batteries. So it's a rechargeable battery, although not a USB connection. It's actually a proprietary contact point that you use with the included charger, magnetic dock and charger for these controllers. The new form factor also allows, while it has the same grip button, trigger buttons, and same button parity as what you find in the Quest 2 controller, they now have a better thumb sensor, so the ergonomics of where your thumb rests are a little different. There's a pressure sensor there right now, as in addition to a new suite of haptic motors, very comparable to like the HD haptics that you'd find on the Swiss Joy-Cons or even the new PlayStation controller. So very sensitive haptics. One of the demos I used was using the controllers to play a game of Jenga, and it felt really good to play that Jenga with the feedback on the controllers themselves. No grip sensor. It's a grip button, so same analog grip button that you have in the Quest 2. So it doesn't have valve index style grip sensors, nor is there a strap system to let you have a grip-free use. So that's going to rely on third-party grip wraps. One interesting thing, though, with the new controllers is a lesson that they innovated with Horizon Workroom. So one of the features you can do in that productivity suite is you can take your Quest controller and you use it kind of as a marker. You kind of flip it upside down and press it onto a hard surface, and you grip it like this. It was a really novel use case. They've really leaned into that, and with the Quest Pro controller, the place where the hand strap typically is connected, you can actually remove that wrist strap, and you can plug in one of the 2 included stylus tips, these little nubs that sit in, and they're just dumb nubs. They don't have extra pressure sensitivity, but combined with the gyro and accelerometers and the sensors inside the controller, it can simulate the pressure sensitivity of writing on a surface. So if you're using it in Horizon Workrooms and hopefully other third-party applications, you'll be able to use that Quest Pro controller as some type of drawing tool, whether on surface or maybe even on a vertical surface as well. One of the surprising things they announced with the controllers, though, is that these would also be backward compatible with Quest 2 headsets. So if you want to take advantage of that tracking and not rely on the headset tracking, so you can have better range of motion and the rechargeable batteries, you can pair the Quest Pro controller, which will be available as a separate SKU, with the Quest 2, although here's the rub, they're going to be $300 for a pair of those controllers, which is quite a price to pay for that little bit of extra functionality. Now, I also mentioned there's going to be backward compatibility with the existing library of Quest 2 applications. It makes a lot of sense. They don't want to split the audience too much. And a lot of developers who are working with the Quest Pro right now are going to have versions of their applications with grayscale pass-through that work with Quest 2, full color pass-through with the Quest Pro, but also means they're going to share the 2 hardware, the 2 headsets share the same processing architecture as well. And the SoC in the Quest Pro is a Qualcomm Snapdragon. It's an XR2 Plus processor. So the XR2 was what was in the Quest 2. Here, it's an iteration on that, although fundamentally it's the same SoC, just packaged differently. So the processing and the RAM are spaced a little further out, which means it allows for better heat dissipation, which allows for Meta to perhaps clock it higher, along with double the memory at 12 gigabytes of RAM. They're saying it's a 50% performance improvement. Those are their numbers, 50% performance improvement over the Quest 2 with essentially the same chipset packaged differently and perhaps clocked higher with better thermals. With that processing, with those sensors, with the use cases, the battery life actually takes a little bit of a dip. They're quoting battery life as 1 to 2 hours, depending on the use case. And one of the questions I'll have is what are the things that will be a heavier drain on batteries outside of rendering. For example, is rendering a full scene, a full VR scene, less or more computationally intensive than a mixed reality scene where you're doing pass-through video combined with some objects rendering in space. And if disabling pass-through video or disabling the face tracking and mouth tracking and eye tracking, will that have any effect, or how much will that affect the battery life as well? Because even if you're maxing this out at a 2-hour battery life, that isn't a lot for some of the extended game sessions. And here, while there is a USB-C port for data and charging, the battery is already built into the back. And so it's not like you could have another third-party Elite strap with battery add-on to add extra battery life. You're literally going to have to adjust the ergonomics by, Velcroing a battery pack to this thing if you want extended battery use. So that will be very interesting to test as well when it gets released. Now, in terms of the demos I tried, a few of them were first-party Meta-developed demos like the Alien in the Mirror to demonstrate the face tracking and some of those tabletop games to demonstrate the new haptics and tracking fidelity of the controllers. But they also brought in a few third-party developers who've been working with the Quest Pro and have apps that are coming out later this month that make use of pass-through and some of the extra features, the MR features like the spatial anchors and the room recognitions. Paint VR was one of the examples, and this is just a nice, relaxing painting application where you can deploy a canvas, use a variety of brushes, and just have fun creating a piece of art with references that you can import as well, but taking advantage of the color pass-through, and also the object and scene recognition. You can also recognize furniture in your real world, a little table, a couch here, as well as walls. And so when you're finished with painting a piece of art, you can actually then place it and lock it into space in your home office or living room environment. It was a similar case with the sandbox application of Figment XR, which was just a lovely sandbox where you could just import all sorts of different models that you upload or find on the internet, images, place them in the world, and with that color pass-through, made it very comfortable to have these rendered objects existing in the space you're exploring. And it will be available in Quest 2 as well. So one of the interesting things I'll be looking out for is what does color pass-through, what does a higher fidelity of video pass-through mean compared to the grayscale environments? Because I enjoy a lot of the existing Quest 2 applications where you have the grayscale pass-through environment as the background, as kind of the global map when playing a game like Cubism, for example. And so when there's color, when there's higher fidelity of video, do I feel more immersed in it? Do I feel more comfortable in my space? These are things to test out when the headset ships. And with productivity being a big focus of the Quest Pro, they're really leaning into the features and expanding the features of Horizon Workroom. And so not only is it kind of the VR equivalent of a Zoom call where you can have these virtual meetings and collaborations with other people in headset, or asymmetrically people dialing in through their traditional computer, there's also the experience of using Horizon Workrooms as a solitary productivity space space where you can have and stream your desktop across multiple monitors from a desktop computer, whether it's a laptop or a desktop computer, and do things not only like web browsing, but actual real productive applications in a virtual space. And with the video pass-through, you can have that virtual space be your real environment or be a hybrid. So you can be in a rendered environment, but also draw a portal and have one part of your world always be visible. So a doorway, for example. So if you want, can make sure you can see animals walk in or other people in your working space or your home, while still being in a fully rendered environment, that becomes the virtual space where you have your virtual monitors. So we can't wrap up the video without talking about the price point elephant in the room, the $1,500 price point, which makes the Quest Pro, even with all of its bundled accessories and its 256 gigs of storage, more than twice the price of a kitted out Quest 2. And if Meta's going to think about having a pro line and a consumer line, a mainstream line, big question for me is going to be what's going to be the dividing line in features and what's going to distinguish the pro line going forward. Is it going to be feature sets or is it going to be performance? Because it's really hard for me to imagine a world where a mainstream Quest 3 headset doesn't have the pancake optics and the ergonomic comfort that I'm finding in the Quest Pro, or doesn't have pass-through mixed reality, because that's where the whole industry is going, or not have eye tracking or face tracking, because that's going to feel essential to this business interest going forward. So is it going to be performance? Is there going to be a big gulf in the type of processing or battery life between the two headsets? That's going to be something I'll have to wait and see. And $1,500 makes it really difficult for someone who's already happy with a Quest 2 to think about upgrading, because the applications are going to be fundamentally the same. Most developers are still going to be developing Quest 2 apps for foreseeable future, and you can still run it as a desktop VR gaming headset with your AirLink or your Link cable. And on the other side of the equation, Meta is obviously looking at what businesses are willing to pay for mixed reality headsets today, like the optical AR headsets like HoloLens and Magic Leap 2, which are far more expensive than $1,500, or even a system like the Vive Pro 2 with aftermarket eye tracking and face tracking being around the $1,500 price point. Businesses might not bat an eye at spending $1,500 to equip their designers and their engineers to work in mixed reality spaces. But for consumers, for hardcore gamers, VR gamers, and VR enthusiasts like myself, that's a really expensive device for something that right now on the Quest 2 I use a couple days a week, and I'm unsure that the Quest Pro is something I use as much as, you know, a smartphone, for example, that I'm already paying upwards of over $1,000 for. Is how I think of a device. If I'm spending over $1,000 on a phone or a laptop, it's got to be something that doesn't just sit on the shelf or sit in a drawer. I have to be using it very regularly. All of that is yet to be seen as these enter the world and will be shipping later this month on October 25th. If you have questions about the Meta Quest Pro, my hands-on time with it, the specs, the details, please post them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them as best as possible. Hope you enjoyed the video and found this insightful. Thank you for supporting us and watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.